This is homework 5, POL242, Boston 2013. Analytic approach. We took the Canadian election study, the current population survey for 2011, which polled 4,308 people. We did an index of dependent and independent variables, a regression analysis, and an elaboration through hierarchical regression. Analytic approach. Our independent variable was belief that Canada's democracy works. Our dependent variable number 1 was confidence in the Prime Minister, second one, confidence in the federal government and economic policies, and the third, confidence in the Conservatives. We plan on constructing a hierarchical regression in an attempt to specify conditions under which previous relationships hold by isolating reliability of democracy in Canada. Research rationale. Canada has been a democratic nation since 1867, when its constitution was ratified. Since then, Canada's democracy has been relatively stable, only suffering a few setbacks. One of these was the recent discontent with Prime Minister Harper and the Quebecois separatist movement. This research explores if these two issues are truly discontent for most Canadians.
Indexing the dependent variable. So I created an index for our dependent variable, including 5 different variables. All the variables regard each Democratic Party, and the alpha score of 0.987 shows that there's a high correlation between all of these variables, meaning that you really measure support for Canada's democracy through the parties.
The univariate raw statistics for satisfaction of democracy in Canada. As we can see from this table, most Canadians are satisfied with democracy in Canada, with 13% very satisfied, 50% fairly satisfied, creating a cumulative percent of 63.6%. However, we see here that 10% are not satisfied at all, and 23% were not very satisfied.
Hypothesis number 1. Individuals who consider Stephen Harper a competent are more likely to be satisfied with the way democracy works in Canada. We have a line or arrow graph showing how we use environment as a control variable to show that Harper is content as a prime minister will lead to a more satisfaction in democracy. Controlling for the environment will show whether Prime Minister Harper has done a good job or not in ensuring Canada's democracy is running well. Our hypothesis number 2 is that individuals who believe the policies of the Canadian federal government have been positive in the economy are more likely to be satisfied with the way democracy works in Canada. We will be using the military as our control variable. By isolating for military expenditure, we will find out the discontent in federal economic policies based on the expansion and decrease in military. Economic policies, as you can see on our arrow graph, will be held against the control variable of military expenditure to find out how democracy works in Canada. Here we have a correlation matrix. Using our 3 dependent variables against our independent variable. As one can see, there is a strong correlation between Harper's satisfaction and the satisfaction of democracy in Canada, and a smaller correlation between economic federal policies and the way democracy works in Canada. In our first regression table here, we have a table with no control variable, showing a beta score of 0.206 when the control variable is inserted. For the environmental control, we see that there's an increase in our beta to 0.318. That is an increase of about 0.11. That is a relatively high increase, showing that if you believe in economic and environmental policies are important, you will believe that Harper is more competent. In our second regression table, we have the same scheme where in the top table we have our beta score without a control variable, 0.32, and that increases also by about 0.11 or 0.12 when taking into account military expenditure, showing that if you believe that the government should spend more money on military, you will be more satisfied with the way the economy is running according to the federal government.
For the results, our first regression table showed the opposite effect that we had expected. According to the survey, the more one cares about the environment, the more likely that individual is to believe Harper is a competent prime minister. The beta value shows an increase of 0.10 when controlling for this variable. This can be considered a relevant increase. The second regression table also showed opposite effects than expected. The beta value increase of about 0.13 shows that as we control for military spending, there is a change in support for federal government policies in the economy. Those who believe there should be an increase in military spending, in fact, believe the federal government is doing a good job in its policies.
The first survey analysis requires further research. Though environmentalists are usually against Harper, the general population seems to accept his competence as a prime minister, regardless of his anti-environmental policies. Canadian citizens might not care as much for the environment as we thought. The second survey analysis shows that the general population is looking for higher military expenditure, especially those who believe the federal government is already making good economic policies. This might be coherent with the opinion that Canadians believe in keeping a strong military, as Canada is one of the highest military expenditures in the world.